Hey, welcome everyone to the Conversation with the CPA event presented by CPA BC, the Chartered Professional Accountants of BC. My name is Natalie Williams, one of the student recruitment officers here at CPA BC. I just want to quickly thank you all for joining us here today. My role at CPA BC is to inform and hopefully inspire future CPAs. And in today's events, we hope to do just that. Give you an opportunity to learn about accounting from a real CPA and to ask your own questions. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we each call home, wherever that may be. And although we are meeting today on a virtual platform, I'd like to acknowledge that CPA BC's physical offices reside on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We do this land acknowledgement to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples. Please join me in a quick moment of reflection. Thank you. Today's session will be around 45 minutes long. Here's a quick overview of the agenda. So the first few minutes will be a quick audience polling question and an introduction to our featured CPA member, Brittany Morrison. We will then hear from Brittany about her own experience on becoming and being a CPA. Afterwards, you'll have the opportunity to ask your own questions for Brittany live. And for those of you who submitted questions beforehand, you will find that some of the questions will already be answered by Whitney during this presentation. And since we only have a short session today, if you have any questions related to the CPA program admission requirements and the program structure, I encourage you to attend one of our weekly information sessions after this webinar, of course. And for questions related to the practical experience or PER requirements, you can check out our monthly practical experience requirement Q&A sessions. I do believe there's a session on PER for PSI students tomorrow as well, so you can check that out on our website. If you did not submit a question beforehand, not to worry, you will still be able to ask your question by typing it either in the Q&A box, it's usually located top or bottom of the screen, or you can request to turn on your microphone and camera at the end and ask your question live. As a side note, the first portion of this webinar will be recorded and posted on our past events page on our website. However, once we get to the Q&A portion of this webinar, we will stop the recording completely. You will also receive a link with the recording in a post-event email next week. Without further ado, let's get started. So as mentioned, we are going to do a quick poll to find out a little bit more about the audience tuning in today. So the question reads, which of the following best describes your current status? And then the options are you a working professional, so 2 or more years since graduation? Are you a recently graduated post-secondary student, a current post-secondary student? Are you a working professional with an internationally designated, international designate? Are you a high school student, or do you fall under the other category? I'll just give it a few more minutes. We'll try and get 100%. Okay, we can go ahead and share those results. So it looks like the majority of you are current post-secondary students, with a few working professionals and a few of you have recently graduated. So great to see a nice bunch, or nice range of people here today. Okay. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our featured guest for today. Brittany Morrison is a CPA and a senior accountant with iGaming Finance at BC Lottery Corporation, or BCLC. She started her career in public practice, but has been with BCLC for 7.5 years. In her current role, she primarily works on projects with diverse agile teams and vendors to implement new iCasino initiatives. Her responsibilities include, but are not limited to, assessing the impact of projects to corporate finance, building requirements, creating test plans, executing user acceptance testing, and operationalizing new initiatives. Please welcome Brittany Morrison.
Thank you, Natalie, for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for being here and taking time out of your day. So every career story has a start, Brittany. So can you please share with us why you decided to become a CPA?
Well, honestly, originally I was planning on becoming a CA. I kind of went into that. That was like my goal. That's part of the reason I really was started out in public practice because it's like that's how the easiest way to become a CA is to go that route. However, right as I was getting ready to enroll in the CA program, surprise, surprise, all three designations merged, and I was then faced with the choice of either fast tracking through the CA program or putting the start date off a little bit and doing the CPA program. So that's actually been kind of the theme of my CPA journey is having to pivot quite often, whether it's because of life things that come in or work opportunities or what have you.
So you were essentially the guinea pig of the brand new CPA program. For those of you that don't know, it used to be the CGA, the CMA, and CA, and they're all merged together in around 2014, 2015. And so Brittany was one of the very first students in the CPA program. So how did you feel during that time, the conversion over to the new program?
It was a little bit hard at first, particularly as someone who likes to have a plan. There was a lot of confusion about what everything was going to look like. Like we were starting core one without even knowing what like future modules or the path was really going to be. It was still just kind of a loose plan. So it was definitely having to like learn on the fly. I also, during my very first Core 1 exam had my computer crash during the exam, which was a great way to start off. And yeah, I ended up I was able to get all the multiple choice section into the computer, but by the time it came to write the case, yeah, it crashed and I ended up having to write it by hand. And
Oh,
literally when I walked out, like I kind of kept it together through all of that. The second I got back to my car afterwards, I fell apart and was just bawling my eyes out
oh
in the
gosh.
parking lot. But hey, I still passed. So
Here
there
you
we
are.
go.
Yeah, here you are today. So here's a quick snapshot of your career journey so far. So you started your career in 2011 as a co-op student at
Mhm.
BDO Canada. So can you tell us a bit more about what drew you to that very first accounting role?
Well, I was really interested in public practice again because I was looking to become a CA. Plus, public practice is a very good way to get like very broad experience in accounting and get exposed to a lot of different aspects of it. Uh, you do compilations, tax, audits. You get when you're working on audits and compilations, you're getting exposed to different companies and different accounting standards in some cases. So yeah, you get a very broad range of experience, which is a very good way to start off your career.
Excellent. And can you kind of walk us through your career timeline after that?
Okay, so yeah, did the co-op for 8 months in 2011, then back to school, also came back for just 4 months in a summer term type thing in 2012, graduated in December of 2012, and then started full-time at BDO in January of 2013. Did core one in September of that year, September through December, I believe. And then in early 2014, kind of made the decision that I wanted to try living somewhere other than Kamloops for a bit. And I chose Victoria. Unfortunately, BDO did not have an office in Victoria, so I ended up switching to Grant Thornton, and I worked there for a little over a year. Um, well, it was technically officially 2 years, but I was actually working there for a year because a year of that was I was on maternity leave. So
Okay.
partway through CPA program, I welcomed my daughter. So basically, was able to complete the Core 1, Core 2, and 2 electives, tax and audit, and then had my daughter in early 2015, so had to put everything on pause for a little bit. Also during that time, it wasn't just becoming a parent, it was becoming a single parent. So I ended up moving back to Kamloops. Originally, that was just supposed to be temporary for my mat leave, so I'd have the support of my family and whatnot. But as my mat leave was coming to a close, it kind of became evident that perhaps public practice was not necessarily the best option for a single mom with the amount of overtime and whatnot. Plus, moving back to Victoria, where I didn't have family support, was also probably not a great idea. And that's when I ended up joining BCLC. Oddly enough, my very first supervisor at BCLC was actually someone who I had worked with at BDO. So that was kind of a
Wow.
fun surprise.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's might be worth noting as well. So you completed your CPA designation very recently. It was in
mhm.
2023, and you started it. Was it back in 2000? And remind me,
The
2014,
2013, so the
13.
TL.
So it took you the usual time frame is around 2.5 years,
Mhm.
and of course you mentioned that you started a family in between there. So talk to us a bit more about how you managed to balance all of that. I know you moved home for some additional support, but it must have been difficult.
It was, but also it having a child actually made it a lot easier to focus because it's like you're not just in it for you anymore. You have, someone else that you're responsible for. And so how I approached it is I knew going straight into Capstone 1, Capstone 2, and the CFE in like one stretch was probably going to be a bit of a thing after being off for a while and taking that break. So I did decide to do a third elective. So I took finance as an elective, just to get back in the swing of things, see how this was going to work now that I had a child. And I actually was pleasantly surprised that it I actually found it easier to balance once I had a child. I know that sounds very counterintuitive, but one of the things I struggled with was taking the mental breaks that I needed from, you work all day, you come home, you do your CPA all day. When you're not working on the CPA, you're feeling guilty about not working on the CPA. Whereas once I had my daughter, it's like I only had certain times that I could work on it. And when I wasn't working on it, there was no guilt because I knew I was in parenting mode and that she was my focus. And actually having that like mental break where I wasn't thinking about it, I wasn't stressing about it. I was like, nope, I'm in parenting mode right now. Once she goes to bed, then I'll switch to CPA mode, and having that like set schedule and that mental break from it all actually made it a lot easier to be focused and in the present when I needed to be.
I think that's a really great insight for anybody in the audience that either has just started a family or is thinking of starting a family whilst alongside the CPA as well. So yeah, it's nice to hear that somebody's done it, been through it, and came
Mhm.
out on the other side. So um, can you also tell us a bit more about, because you've mentioned you started your career in public practice and then transitioned into industry. Talk to us a bit about that transition.
Um, it was actually a really kind of I actually really enjoy industry. Not to say that I didn't enjoy public practice, but it's a much different view of everything. And it's kind of nice to get, instead of just like coming in for, dealing with like basically year-end type stuff and going away and then that's the end of your thing with that company. It is seeing everything in the different parts of corporate finance and getting really into the nitty-gritty details of everything. I found really interesting. um, Also, in this particular case with BCLC being a crown corporation, it did have a little bit more work-life balance, a little bit more of a set schedule. Not to say that there isn't any overtime, but it is a lot easier to predict and not as substantial as some of the public practice roles. But I know that is not true across the board for industry. Um, Obviously, some have just as much overtime, or if not more, than public practice.
So since we're on the topic of BCLC, can you tell us a bit more about BCLC and also what it is you do from day to day as a senior accountant for BCLC?
Sure. BCLC is a crown corporation, so it kind of handles all of the gaming within BC. So that includes online gambling, so Play Now, um, lottery across BC, all of the casinos across BC and whatnot. We have a lot of partnership with service providers and um, other groups, retailers to deliver quality gaming across BC.
Fantastic. And then yeah, your role in particular, what do you get up to from a day to day?
So, I've worked in iGaming for most of my time at BCLC, and so this is basically anything to do with the online side of the gambling industry. So anything that goes through Play Now. I, as a senior accountant, work mostly on the project side. I work in I At that level, there we've kind of split it into different streams. My personal stream is iCasino, which includes like slots, tables, live casino, bingo. I also handle a lot of our any sort of SAP projects, so that's our financial system. Have quite a broad range. So that a lot of that is working with, we have agile teams. So I work a lot with the iCasino agile team. So anytime we have like a new vendor or a new platform or any sort of thing like that, I'm going to be the one looking at it from a finance perspective, figuring out like where the impact is, what needs to be done, building any requirements if that's necessary, doing the testing and making sure everything integrates properly because uh, often it doesn't. The first time anyways. So yeah, it's really interesting because it's a mix of like accounting and finance with like almost an IT side of it because I'm working a lot with developers and um, like web dev people and all that stuff to make sure that we have everything that we need.
Excellent. So before you started working for BCLC, did you already have like a bit of a tech background? Were you good with IT, or was it just the CPA and you've learned the other things along with it?
I had absolutely no background in tech other than just what you pick up by, using the, computers and stuff. It's so yeah, a lot of it has been learning it on the fly. I will fully admit I still don't know a lot of how some of the background stuff works, but I've learned enough of the lingo that I can at least have conversations with the people that do understand how it works and making sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah. And just before we move on to some of the live Q&A, can you share some advice to any audience members that perhaps are considering the CPA designation?
Um, well, one thing I will say don't do what I do and leave the practical experience of reporting to the end and then scramble to get it figured out, because that is primarily what took me so long to finish. Passed the CPA in 2017, and it took me until 2023, the start of 2023, to actually get designated. Um, but also like what I mentioned about taking those mental breaks when I was parenting, like even if you don't have kids, still do that. Like you really need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself throughout the process, because the last thing you want to do is get partway through the program and burn yourself out. So it is a process, and it like is very beneficial and it's rewarding, and you definitely feel great when it's over, but you got to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And it would be nice if we could just do all of this in a vacuum where you don't have things going on in your life and you just, do it, but that's often not what actually happens. So you just make sure it's like if you have to pace yourself, if it takes you a couple extra years to actually get the letters, that's not the end of the world. It's much better to take the time and take care of yourself through that process than get to the end of it and hate accounting because you've just burned yourself out in the process.
No, that's really good advice. And I think one of the benefits of the CPA program is the flexibility and in doing it over years. I think you get 7 to do the 6 to do the education and an extra month to do the practical experience. So yeah, it offers that flexibility for people like yourselves.
Yeah, and if you have kids along the way, you can also take some non-active years, which is what I did, which is why it's
Exactly.
a little bit longer than 7 years.
Yeah. So just moving on, because we do have some pre-submitted questions from the audience members as well. So the first one is, did the accounting courses you took in university aid in the CPA modules?
Definitely. Makes it a lot easier to get going through the modules if you have that background that you get from the accounting courses you take in university. It would be very hard to jump into it without that background.
And next question is, does the academic results affect the eligibility to get recruited for PEP or the practical experience? Sorry, for what am I trying to say? Sorry, to get recruited for PEP into an accounting firm, and what are the top priorities? Let me read that one more time. Does the academic results affect the eligibility to get recruited for PEP into an accounting firm, and what are the top priorities?
Well, generally, grades are always going to help you get in with an employer like that, especially if you don't have a ton of previous work experience. Like that is a selling feature when you're, advertising yourself to an employer that you did quite well in, your accounting courses in university. That indicates to them that you're, perhaps have a better chance of actually completing the CPA program. However, that's not the only thing that matters. It's not, you don't have to be the top student in your year in order to get a position. They're also looking for like kind of the enabling competencies piece. Like, uh, are you hardworking? What kind of experience you have? Like when you are looking to um, apply to an employer and you're in the interview um, process, like you just have to focus on what value you bring. So, like when you're looking at previous work experience, yeah, you might have never had an accounting sort of job in the past, but you still have your experience. A lot of those skills are still transferable. So, um, time management skills and ability to balance multiple priorities at the same time and all of that stuff. You can use examples from volunteer experience, from work experience, from working on group projects in university. There's a lot of things that employers are looking for beyond just academic grades.
And the next question is, how can I register as a CPA, and what should I do to prepare for future CPA?
Oh, well, I think you
Well,
guys would be the
I was to
best
say
people to
the
talk about rent.
first part of that question, how can I register? I recommend watching one of our workforce information sessions. But in terms of what should they do to prepare as a future CPA, can you offer some insights?
I don't know if there's really like a easy thing. I think just getting some accounting experience does help you use that mindset of, and also just like there's a lot of information like on the CPA website about like the CPA mindset and just taking that into account. And yeah, it's pretty much without getting, you pretty much need to be in it to really get it anyways. So I don't know if there's a lot of things you can do um, in preparation. You like it's
You just
it's
have
its
to
own
bite the bullet, right?
yeah, it's its own beast,
Yeah.
and you don't really know how you're going, like depending on your learning style and all these things, you don't really know how you're going to be in it until you're in it.
And next question is, how much weight is a CPA given in an accounting position? Can one succeed without it?
It's not impossible to succeed without a CPA. I have known people who are like controllers in smaller companies that don't have that aren't designated that just have, you know, a bachelor's degree. But in most cases, if you want to make accounting a career, you do need a designation. Like within my own corporation, there's only so far you can go as far as moving up in accounting type role, you know, within corporate finance without a designation, so that it is going to hold you back if that's not something you're interested in.
Absolutely. What I'm going to do now is open it up for the live portion of this webinar. So, oops, just bear with me a second. Um, Sorry, I'm having some tech issues here. But so as a reminder to the audience, you can either submit your question in the Q&A box or yeah, so the Q&A, not the chat box, or you can click the raise hand button and turn on your microphone and camera to ask your question live for Brittany. Your question and your name will be shown to other attendees. Again, if you have questions related to the CPA program requirements, program structure, or admissions, anything to do with that, I encourage you to attend one of our bi-weekly CPA information sessions. And for questions related to the practical experience or PER requirements, you can check out the PER Q&A sessions, or there's also an event tomorrow, so you can always register for that. If you are now watching this on demand, the recording will now stop. So thank you for watching.